Namaste and welcome to Inspiring Women, produced by Today's Youth Asia. Inspiring Women is an attempt to bring successful women and inspiring stories on women leadership from around the world.
Good evening, Namaste, Assalamu Alaikum, everyone. My name is Farhana Shah, and I am a staff development teacher in Maryland, USA, and my job basically consists of working with teachers to enhance the instruction in their classrooms. And I consult with them, I coach, I train them, I write I write training plans, and I bring in specialists. So I wear many hats, and it depends on what is needed each day. And I have also, through a grant that was given from my school system, I wrote a module for non-Muslim educators on the overview of Islam that I've presented in many conventions there, and it is always well liked because even though 90% of Muslim students attend the public school system there, teachers still are not aware. So when they walk out, they get useful information about Islam, and then they understand because they want to learn more about Muslim students. Islam places great importance on education because the first word and revelation that came to Muhammad, peace be upon him, was read in the name of your Lord who taught man what he knew not, which means that it is a birthright of every Muslim male, female, and child to get education because we know that education improves overall our thinking, our character. We become better citizens, we make better decisions when we have education, when we have knowledge. If we look into Islamic history, it was a great importance placed on education, and even the mosque is a great symbol of education in Islam because the first school was started in the first mosque that was built by Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his companions. And at that time, students, both girls and boys, were expected to attend, and the fundamentals of reading, writing, math was started, not the reading of the Quran. Yes, the Arabic, a little bit of Arabic, knowing the names of God, and few verses, short verses of the Quran were also taught in the beginning. But the fundamentals of reading, writing, and math were also one of the first things that were started. And after that, if the students progressed and they were interested in advancing their knowledge in the Quran, in the translation, and learning more about it, then they moved on to madrasas. And we know now that madrasas are used a little differently than it was at that time. So, but at the same time, emphasis was placed on biology, on statistics, all of the subjects that we teach today in our high schools, in our colleges, universities. So it's very important. And at this time, we know that in America we have Islamic education. It basically takes place in two forms. One is through private schools, which aren't too many, but they're still progressing. There are a lot more than there were a few years ago. And the most, I would say, accessible is the Sunday school, in which students who attend public schools, and most of the Muslim students, about 90% or more, attend public schools. So they choose to attend the Sunday Islamic schools for about 2 to 3 hours. So that is where they get their Islamic education. And however, we know that you can't get any kind of education 2 to 3 hours a week. It has to be something that's consistent. And that's why it is so important in Islam to get an education, both the world and religious.
In developing countries, people struggle for food, clothing, and shelter. How can people of such countries think of education as their basic necessity?
I think that comes back to the government, because each country you have a governing body that is responsible for you. So I think that should be something that should be part of their agenda. Just like food is necessary, clothing is necessary, shelter is necessary, so is education. Because we can continue to eat and clothe ourselves, but how do we enhance our minds? Because that also needs fuel, which is education and knowledge. And that's the only way we'll get out of that poverty is through.
Being a counselor, how can you suggest youth to develop themselves?
Well, what you're doing now is exceptional. You're developing yourself on your own, right? Taking initiation. That is a sign of leadership. When you initiate something, when you take the first step, you don't wait for somebody to come to you and say, do this. So always a sign of a good leader or one that's going to be a future leader is initiation. That this is something you want to do. You know that for your community this is something that's lacking, and then you find a way. You get people together to make it happen. That's how you develop yourself.
Does not the old education of madrasas place the young Muslims off track from their mainstream career choices?
Not as I mentioned in my earlier talk, that the actual philosophy behind the madrasas wasn't what you probably see today. It was related to education. It was about math. It was about reading, writing, and Arabic and Quranic reading. So it included everything. It was both worldly knowledge as well as religious knowledge. How we deterred from that, I think, is where maybe the narrow-mindedness came in and kind of took over. So, and I think what happens is when you have people who don't initiate their own knowledge, when you rely on somebody else's knowledge, that's what happens. And I think that is where the madrasas became weak, because they started relying on, for instance, even in America, or Christians, let's say, who rely on just the knowledge of their pastors or priests, that's what they rely on, and that's what they're going to use. And we have a lot of Muslims who rely on Maulanas or Maulvis and think whatever they say is correct. That's where they become weak. And in Islam, it is you, it is God, and it is yourself that should be initiating your own decisions, your knowledge, everything. So there's no middleman. But when you start putting people as intercessors, that's where you become weak.
Since we are on the topic of the religion, now what we see is the differences between the parents and the children. So can this religious study fill in the gap between the parents and the children?
Well, we know that we can't force our parents to go to school now, right? So, and you don't have to go to school to get an education, right? But however, in today's society, in 21st century, there is a form of measurement, right? There's a system of measurement, which is a degree, right? So you have to go. However, to go back to your question, parents, while they're not going to go to school, you have to continue to do what you need to do while respecting them at the same time. You will have to find ways to help them to understand. But I still believe where there's a will, there's a way. And you are smart enough, bright enough to do that. And I think the beautiful part about this part of the world is the respect and the culture that it teaches, the respect that's embedded in this culture. So I think you will definitely find a way, because every parent, every family culture is different. So I think that's a question that the individual person has to decide and think about, rather than, there's no one answer. I can't tell you to disrespect your parents. I can't tell you to go against them, but it is something that you do have to think about, because you can't lose yourself either. You have to find a way to better yourself, to educate yourself.
So can this religious study create a pathway for the children and the parents?
I personally don't think it can, because if you think about it, every religion teaches good, right? And everything that we talk about being human teaches good. So how could that be separated? It can't, and it can't lead you away if you're truly at heart doing what is right. Getting an education is doing right. Treating your parents with respect is doing right. So there's nothing religious about it. It's about being human. It's about doing the right thing. So if you think of it in that respect, you won't separate religion and the world, because it should be. You should live a balanced life, and if you marry the two together, that makes one whole person.
There is this general perception that Islamic education leads to terrorism. So what are the steps that young generations of Islamic people taking to change this concept so that it's thought that Islamic education leads to love, peace, knowledge, and humanity?
Okay. Well, there are many things already. That's a great question. There are many things already in place in America that we're doing, and I think it's just taking everybody doing their part. Every Muslim, and I think it's not just Muslim, it's everybody, because you have Muslim friends, right? And you know how they are. They're not terrorists. So I think it's everybody taking a piece and situation by situation, educating those who don't understand, because, we have ignorant people everywhere in the world. It's just not Muslims. It's everyone, because we're all human, and when we don't understand something, we're afraid of it, and then we lash out and we do things that are negative. So, for instance, in America, we have university students who have Muslim Students Associations, and they, during Ramadan time or during Eid or any kind of events where they take more initiation and then go out and inform the public. And then often we've had even non-Muslim friends of theirs who fasted just to go through that, to understand their friends. For instance, like I mentioned, I wrote a module on overview of Islam. We have university programs that offer understanding of Islam. We have, for instance, I don't know if you heard in the news or if it even made it to Nepal, during the time of when they were talking about, there was a big controversy about the mosque being built at Ground Zero. Then there was a pastor in Florida who wanted to burn, he had like 200 Qurans and he wanted to burn that. So, and he was really, really, adamant about it, and he was going to do this. And then this gentleman, and I can't recall his name right now, but he, with his team, he's a nonprofit organization, went to Florida, and he said to that pastor, he said, well, you're going to burn this. Why don't I purchase these from you? So finally they convinced him. He did not burn the Quran, and this non-Muslim gentleman bought the Qurans, and then he went to churches. He gave those Qurans to churches, and he said, you know what? During your Sunday services, why don't you read some excerpts from it? This way, people who will never, ever, ever come even close to a Quran will at least hear what's in it.
What inspired you to take education degree for your master's level?
Well, I'm very passionate about education. I think education is the key to success. Knowledge is power. And the more you get educated, the more your mind opens, and the more you become tolerant and accepting of others.
Not many youths aim to become a teacher in today's time, though it is a very noble job and can shape the lives of many youths. So, how do you inspire youths to become a teacher, and that too a very good one?
I think teaching is something that has to be from the heart. You can't force someone to become a teacher, nor would I force somebody to become a teacher. It has to be, it's like your faith. It comes from the heart. So, yes, you can inspire by being a great teacher, but to really convince someone, I personally don't think so unless they are really in it. However, you can provide experiences to develop an interest.
What message would you like to give to the youths?
What message? Is to never ever give up and always, always be the initiator. If you have an idea, go for it. That's it. Simple.
As a child, did you ever imagine that you will be working to improve the field of education in U.S. and abroad?
I did decide when I was probably around 10 years old. But I didn't know that I would be sitting here in front of a TV show answering questions about it. But yes, I always wanted to be an ambassador in terms of education, promoting education, being able to inspire people that, that education is a betterment of your life. So yes, I didn't see specifically as professional development, but yes, I saw myself as going out and at least saying how I felt about education.
How was the experience in Nepal?
Okay. This is the first time I've been to Nepal, and the hospitality has been so overwhelming. I don't know how I'm going to be when I go back, because this is not how it is with us there. We're a very individualistic society. So I have been so spoiled here, and I have loved being here every minute. And the teacher trainings have been great. I mean, I've received positive feedback, and people want me to come back. And I think the message that I've given to people, the teachers here, is to please continue what they're doing, use their passion for educating others, to find ways with the limited resources they have. And again, what I would say to the youth, I would say to everybody, never ever give up, because that is what forms who you are. And 10 years from, today, what you've gone through is what will make you strong. So if you give up, you're not going to be strong. So my message is always never ever give up. Continue with whatever it is you're doing.
Thank you for watching us. We look forward to your feedback. Our email address is youthtya@gmail.com. We'll be back next week at the same time. Have a nice week. Namaste.